you don't have any recourse. But I think most of the time, the people I've dealt with, and like I said, they called me, they wanted me to go to breakfast with them the other morning, and I told them up front, I said, look, you need to know where I'm coming from before you invite me to breakfast, because you may not want me there. And they didn't have any problem with it at all. And I said, these are my ideas on what's going on.
So what do they want? If you as a majority of them, what do they want? They don't want any cleanup?
I didn't perceive that, but I didn't sit down and talk with them.
Okay, well, I see. I'm curious. We only get the vocal minority up here. That's all we get. We don't get, Joe Citizen who has a nice place and wants to keep it up. And if he comes up here and says, well, I got this place and it's decreasing in value because this guy's a slob over here, and then he's going to get blasted. Well, he's not going to get up in a meeting and say that.
Right.
So, well, if we don't do our job, it's not going to get cleaned up.
In my opinion, you guys have been forced into a box here, and that's just my opinion. Before, the county commissioners, all this was dealt with before it got to them, and all they had to do was ultimately make a final decision. I attended all those meetings, as most of you know, because I wanted to see what was going on. And it was interesting to me, the people that came. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. But and it may not work. This may be an entirely new generation, and my concept of public hearings may not work. But I very truthfully believe that you start in areas. Start with Dempsey Acres. You say, okay, kids, we're going to have a town hall meeting in the Mills building where they're
senior center.
Yeah.
We don't want to go into.
Well, but that's just a spot, okay?
Terry and I did with the Dempsey Acres group a couple months ago, and the hatred between some of those neighbors, you call them neighbors, was palpable.
Yep, I know.
See,
I've been there before.
Mr. Chair, some of the hatred starts with, unfortunately, I like them both, but Dick Sadler and Whitlock, because Whitlock built this fancy house in a trashy area. I hate to call it trashy, maybe that's not the words to use, but not in a good-looking area. And he built this several $100,000 house, and now the neighbors say, hey, he knew what it was like before he moved out there. And now he's trying to do so. It's like moving out by the airport and wanting the airport to move because you built a house out there.
But people do.
I know it.
And to be honest with you, if you looked at the zoning regs and said, guess what? This stuff that's going on here is not approved by the county and needs to be cleaned up.
You guys aren't doing your job.
But don't
you guys, that's what he basically did, said, hey, I got a nice resident out here and you're enforcing your regulations.
I certainly agree there needs to be areas out there cleaned up, but I will say on behalf of the old-time county commissioners, twice I was out there on one Saturday, 2 Saturdays, different times, different years. We had a major cleanup drive, and we had tractors out there, the road and bridge was out there and all that. So the county commissioners were involved twice in having area cleanups out there.
Been in there, we had the dumpster out there too.
Yeah, so that's 3 times.
But then you have to go enforce the laws, other than just go offer them free.
No, I understand that. I
enforce the laws and
I understand that, but I mean, we have been involved over the years.
If you're going to write them, you got to back them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them were written back in '72, and the people that bought in there, some of them, there was a guy that up on Wolf Creek the other night, and I'll bet he may have been there before '72. I mean, that's a true grandfather.
Yeah. One of the big time problems is nothing was done, and they've settled in, and the grass has grown, and everybody's content. And now we're beginning to go this way.
Yeah.
And that's.
Can I speak to that? I mean, and it's just been my experience is that we haven't. You're right, Harold. We haven't addressed a lot of those issues, but we've asked planning. And they say, they could certainly always use more staff, but they have hundreds of complaints on their desk, and so I guess they just tend to get to the worst of the worst, or if a commissioner happens to get a phone call, we'll call Gene or Bill or something like that, then I guess that complaint tends to find its way to the top of the pile or something like that, And so you're right. You're right in saying I think that a lot of them haven't been addressed, but I think that's some of the reason why.
Well, and I think that's part of planning's obligation, is to address them. I don't see you guys as having to do that except when push comes to shove.
Planning doesn't help either.
I
There's a lot of that.
can't help but believe that planning and development, code enforcement are looking for this board to go ahead. You know, they're looking here saying, hey, I have the opportunity to be torn back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, as this gets resolved. Would you guys please resolve this, and we'll go do our job. And I think that's our obligation, is to come to some resolution on the car issue. Get that done. They're continuing to work on the junk issues, and the tire issues, and you know, the abuses that are out there. And I don't know that we really know all the stacks of citations and everything that's out there.
You know, here's another thing too, and I'm not putting them down, although there's a lot of jokes going on about attorneys, but I'll tell you what, you've never had the planning that's being ran by an attorney, and then Gene Wallace, his assistant, is a retired attorney from Conoco, as you well know. When you get two attorneys together, and they're good buddies because they have something in common, you just make a hill out of them, an anthill.
Let me tell you what, Terry, I think that is maybe the most asinine statement I've ever heard.
Well, that's good, because I've heard a couple from you too, Bill, but I haven't said anything.
I'm gonna tell you that I believe that the one thing that being an attorney does, it teaches you critical thinking skills.
Well,
and I appreciate now they are doing their job.
I told you I wasn't putting them down. I just said, and you can ask a lot of people in this town, when you get two attorneys together, they take an anthill and they make one of the highest peaks out of it sometimes.
They have a tendency to do that, but they are different.
All right, let's get back. Go ahead, one more comment.
Just one quick comment. I think you're right, though. I think they are looking for us to move forward. And they're not only they're attorneys, but I think they're human, and they're seeing some of the blogging and stuff that's going on that's directed specifically at them, and they're starting to take it personally. So, yeah, I think the sooner we move forward, I think the better.
Yeah.
Now,
Harold,
my last 2 cents were